Okay, I'm live. And yes, I do have a hat on, but it keeps disappearing depending on where I am in the shot. So just wanted to warn you about that. Okay, let me make sure I'm live on Instagram. All right, good. Good, good, good. All right, I'm gonna give people a few minutes to come on because I said I was gonna be on at 4:30. So it's about 3 minutes away, so everybody get everything adjusted, and we're gonna jump right on in. Now, I was going to wait until Friday, but everybody was like, no, 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 you got to do this today. We got to hear from you today. So that's why I'm on here now. Because normally my weekly comics chat drops on Friday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. But this trailer dropped today, and it's literally been the buzz of the internet. Okay, it's been the buzz of Twitter. It's been the buzz of YouTube. It's literally been this Fantastic Four trailer has been. So I'm like, I had to come on and talk about it now, today. So now one thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using still shots because I don't want to take a chance putting the trailer in my video. I know that's fair use and everything, but sometimes you still get copyright strikes or sometimes you still get copyright claims, and I really didn't want to take a chance in either one of those. So I'm going to be using stills from my Twitter stream until I can uh, put together a video that I know won't get copyright claimed or copyright struck because I don't need that. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead on and get started. I know I'm a few minutes early, but we need to jump right on in because I have a lot to talk about. What else is new? Okay. And yes, I do have a hat on. It's just where I am in the stream makes it disappear. Okay. That's why I'm sitting up here looking like Brainiac from the Legion of Superheroes. See that? Okay. Okay. So let's jump on in and get started. Now, my overall feelings on this trailer, if I just have to kind of sum up my overall, I said on Twitter I wanted to spend a little bit more time with it because I needed to balance my gut reaction with my thoughtful reaction. So, what did my gut tell me? How did it make me feel initially? And after thinking about it and looking at it some more, what was my response? Okay. And the answer to that question is this trailer trying to do too much. This trailer is absolutely trying to do too much. Okay. It's trying to mix like a pseudo 1960s United States vibe with a futuristic kind of George Jetson's vibe. And this is taking place on an alternate Earth. So this isn't even 616 Marvel. That's too much at once. Okay? There's too many different things pulling in too many different directions. If it's supposed to be like Earth in the 60s, that was a very specific time frame and very specific kind of feel. But if it's also supposed to be like a futuristic thing, you know, and trying to merge those together. But the other question is, if it's not on Marvel 616 main Earth, are there any real stakes? Because if this is not going to integrate into the larger Marvel universe, it's going to be more like a one shot. It's going to be more like a one off. And are the characters that we meet in this movie going to be the same characters going forward? They've already said that Doctor Doom, Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom, Tony Doom, is going to be a one and done or a two and done with Doomsday and Secret Wars. So kind of what's the point? So that's also my concern here because if all these because there's a whole idea of emotional investment. And if you want us to emotionally invest in these characters and their stories, if we're not ever going to see them again past this movie, then what's the point? if these characters are not going to interact with the characters that we already know and love, then again, this is a one-off. It's kind of like in its own space, in its own pocket. Okay? And that doesn't make any sense if you're going to ultimately integrate it into the larger MCU. What they should have done, and I'm going to repeat this later on in the video, what they should have done is they should have capped off the MCU as we knew it with the Thanos saga. So that means from Iron Man to Avengers Endgame and everything in between, they should have let that be its own thing and then ended it after Endgame. Then whatever other shows they wanted to do, because they did a lot of other shows, WandaVision, Ms. Marvel, Echo. One good thing they did do was Daredevil. They also did Defenders. And if they want to do stuff like that, it should have been a soft reboot. It should have been a separate kind of thing. They should let the Thanos saga stick on its own, because that was the height and that was the peak. And then they should have branched off and done something else as a soft, or maybe even a full reboot. Because the actual reboot should be Fantastic Four. It should be this. But with all that mixed up together, it muddies the waters unnecessarily so. So the trailer starts out with, well, okay, I'll get to the countdown launch in a minute. The trailer itself, the original trailer that I saw, starts off with little kids running to see the launch. And it's really interesting because now we have to have inclusion in everything we do. So there's Black kids, there's Caucasian kids, there's Asian kids. And I'm like, depending on where you lived in 1960s America, because my father told me about that time, depending on what year it was in the 60s, depending on where you lived, it didn't look like that. So I didn't know if that was specifically what they were going for or not. Because that kind of threw me out of it, seeing multi-ethnic kids or kids from, different ethnicities all gathering together to look at the TV like that. Where in America was that happening? You need to be a little bit more specific if you're going for a 60s vibe. Now, if you want an example of a show that knew how to blend modern day with retro stuff, that would be Batman the Animated Series. That was perfection, because Batman the Animated Series had a 1930s aesthetic. Those cars were old school cars. They used Gatling guns. Those guns were old school. That was old school gangster stuff. Yet, there's not enough modernity in it. There's enough modern technology in it. And what it ended up doing was it makes it kind of timeless. So it gives you kind of that throwback retro feel, which is the right feel for Gotham, for Batman to be doing all his Batman stuff in it, because Batman was born in 1939. So it kind of makes sense in that way. But at the other end of the spectrum, it's also, you can watch it anytime and understand it and enjoy it. It's not so rooted in that time until it won't make any sense. See, that's the perfect blend of a retro vibe and a modern vibe. Batman the Animated Series did it the best. With this Fantastic Four First Steps trailer, it is just too much. Too many disparate elements that are speaking different things, trying to be juxtaposed together in the same space. So I'm going to get into that. So first, we're going to look at the countdown, how they had a countdown to the launch. And the countdown is in a fictional world focused on Rocket with, the timer going off and the timer counting down. And so they made it feel like it was a launch in the fictional world, whether it was their first launch when they first went up into space or whatever. It's supposed to be an analog of getting ready to launch the trailer, but it felt like an actual event in the fictional world. Now, it's possible to take an event in the fictional world and make it feel real out here in the real world, because they did that with the death of Superman. That was everywhere. That was on TV, news, radio. They were treating it like it was real. So I know it's possible, but the way they did this, the way they counted down with a rocket launch timer and made people wait all those hours just for the dropping of the trailer, it's a little bit jarring and disjointed. So it kind of snaps us out of the fictional world and into the real world with an interview with the actors. Let me pull that. picture up because I want to show you these pictures as I am talking. Okay, so you ought to be able to see that on your screen. So it pulls us into uh, the interview, and all the fans are there, or whatever, which is really kind of cool. But at the same time, with that rocket launch countdown, it felt jarring to go from the fictional world, because when you build anticipation like that, you actually want to see something that resonates with what built that anticipation. And this was about actually cutting to a studio, a real space center, and coming back into the real world. So there's that. So what they do next is they bring out the cast. They bring out the cast, and then they start to interview. Now, not only was the transition jarring, it's in a space center with a Saturn V rocket overhead, and that's supposed to be an analog to everything that's going on in the fictional world. So it's an uneasy blend. And it was also full of puns, puns about launching and space, and they kept using the word fantastic, which is a big old camera wink. You know, you keep winking at the camera. You feel it fantastic? You know, it was just kind of really heavy-handed. On top of that, the interviewer herself really felt unsure of herself in the questions. Like she was making it up. It's like she wasn't sure what to say. And the cast came across as a little bit stuttery. Like when Edmund did that thing, you know, whisper, it's clobbering time, that went over like a lead balloon. That was kind of lame. It's like nobody was prepared for this. So I know it was early in the morning and everything. I know everybody's sleeping and all that, but it didn't feel like on either side, the interviewer or the cast, it didn't feel like they had the energy of we're ready to do this. The energy was in a crowd, because you're always going to have energy in crowds when celebrities are there, when your favorite actors are there. Especially when Pedro came out, people were freaking out, you know, because they know him from other things, Game of Thrones, Mandalorian, Last of Us. He's everywhere. So, but I just thought that was kind of off. I'm like, didn't y'all rehearse this? Don't you kind of have an idea of what's going on? Especially if you're trying to pull off the blending of the fictional world with the real world. Okay? So there's that. And yes, I'm being detailed. I know you might call it nitpicky, but I call it detailed. Okay, next we're going to deal with the cast itself. So we have, as Ben Grimm, we have Evan Moss Backrack. As Johnny Storm, we have Joseph Quinn. Sue Storm, we have Vanessa Kirby. You'll recognize her from the Mission Impossible series with Tom Cruise. And then as Reed Richards, we have Pedro Pascal. No. We also have John Malkovich. He's either going to be Puppet Master, which is Alicia Masters' father, Ben Grimm's blind sculptor's girlfriend. He's going to be the Puppet Master, or he's going to be the Red Ghost. Now, the Red Ghost is like the Soviet version of the Fantastic Four, except he went up with apes. So he went up with 3 apes, and they got cosmic powers, and they came back superpowered. So it's like a Soviet version of the Fantastic Four. So Malkovich is either going to be Puppet Master or Red Ghost. Okay? Then we have Julia Garner, which we didn't see in the trailer, as Shalaval Silver Surfer. I'm going to say a little bit more about that when we get to that, because I'm not assuming everybody is versed in the comics. So I'm going to give you a little background. And then for Galactus himself, we have Ralph Ineson. So it's a bit of the blend. Some of the cast is working, some are not, and some remain to be seen, because the only one that I feel is on point 100%, I feel like Eben is on point as Ben, and I feel like Malkovich, I know Malkovich is going to crush no matter who he is. But Johnny, Joseph Quinn, he just looks, I don't know how to say it, he looks like an old teenager. Like it looked like he's trying to be young, but he looked like he's 30 trying to be 17. Okay. Vanessa Kirby just does not look like I would expect Sue to look like in real life. And I'm not saying she's unattractive. I'm saying she's not Sue to me. Who is Sue to me is Alice Eve is Sue. Emily Blunt is Sue. Catherine Winnick is Sue. If Sue were real, she'd look like that. Vanessa Kirby, her face is specific, but it don't look like Sue to me. Okay. Ironically, because Sue was actually an actress before she got her powers, but I never pictured her as Vanessa. Pedro Pascal, however, is completely wrong for Reed. I don't care who don't like that. We've been saying that from day one. He is not Reed Richards. Okay? What an actor is supposed to do is disappear into the role. They're supposed to disappear into the role. So you don't see them, you see the character. Okay? That is not what Pedro does with Reed. You don't look like one of the smartest men in the world. Reed is not Hispanic. It's just off. I know that they have a tendency to cast the it person of the moment, and I know Pedro is clearly the it person because he's in everything, but he is not Reed Richards. And it just throws the whole vibe off because you want to use your suspension of disbelief for the powers, for the impossible science, for the sci-fi, for the fantasy elements. You want to use your suspension of disbelief for that. You don't want to use it to try to have to push past the fact that this actor is not that character. Okay? So I don't care who don't like that. I don't care how mad you get. Pedro Pascal is not Reed. The end. Okay? So, and it remains to be seen on the rest of the cast. Now we're going to continue to scroll through. And we're going to start with the trailer itself. So when the trailer picks up, they're already powered up and they're living inside the Baxter building. And it seems like they're giving a tour. So the house and the clothes just look kind of funny to me because, again, they're trying to be old-fashioned and futuristic at the same time. And I really feel like you kind of need to pick one in this context. It's not that that can't be done. I just don't think they're doing it with this. Because you're trying to pull me back like Days of Future Past when they went back in time. And that felt like the time period they traveled back to. Are you trying to do that? Are you trying to give me that futuristic kind of Jetsons feel? And then if you notice, I want you to notice the lighting. I want you to notice the lighting in this entire trailer kind of casts a haze around it. So it makes it psychologically feel like a bit of a dream sequence, just a little bit. But the impact that has on your mind is that it might take you out of the moment. That's what I'm saying. It needs to be rooted in something. I need to either feel like I'm in the 1960s or feel like I'm in the future and feel like it's really happening. I don't need to feel like I'm both in the 60s and the future and it's a dream. You follow what I'm saying? Okay. Pedro does not even sound like Reed. He sounds nerdy in the bad way. Not nerdy in the brilliant mind kind of way. Okay, because there ain't nothing wrong with sounding nerdy, but when you sound nerdy like you don't have no friends or you don't have no social life or no social skills or nerdy just like you're not connected to anybody kind of nerdy, as opposed to nerdy because you're brilliant. Brilliant people spend most of their time in their heads, so don't really develop social skills. That's more Reed, because he's always wrestling and stretching with these ideas that stretch the mind. And so for him not to have social skills is kind of to be expected. But this guy sounded more like apologetic. And that ain't Reed. Okay. Sue has a look on her face in the next shot where she looks very much like and that dress, man, if that ain't a retro dress, and that tie, if that's not an old school tie, but that look on Sue's face is kind of like a June Cleaver kind of thing, kind of like a Leave It to Beaver, kind of like I'm just trying to feed my family, stand by my man, kind of, be a good housewife kind of thing. And once again, nothing wrong with that. If that's the vibe you're trying to give me, it's just not clear. And I think it should be clear because, again, what happens, it's not something you can always articulate. It's something your brain does. When your brain knows that things are not really meshing like they're supposed to, it creates a cognitive dissonance, whether you articulate it or not. You can still feel it because you can't fool your brain. Okay? So next up, let me pull up this next thing because I want you to see these next pictures. No, that's not it. This is it. Okay. So let's pull these up. So now, there's the Baxter building. Now, with that shot of the Baxter building, that feels completely futuristic. And I think it looks really, really cool. I actually really like it. Okay. It looks like there would be all kinds of advanced technology in it and all kinds of cool things that you wouldn't have in the modern day. But that means, at least to me, that there should be AI controlling everything, and everything should be fully automated, and it ought to be on a different level if it looks like that on the outside, because there's not a building in the past that would look like that. So again, the trailer is a clash of aesthetics, because then we go again back inside, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. But this is what we see on the inside. Look at that clock. And look at the things that are happening. Now, I have to say something about Herbie. Herbie was first introduced in Fantastic Four 209 in the comics. Okay, now I got to be honest. I got to show my bias here. I don't like Herbie. Okay, I hate Herbie. I never liked Herbie. You know why? Because when they did the Fantastic Four cartoon, Herbie was there instead of Johnny, and they explained it by saying they had the option, the rights to the Human Torch off separately. Then, so Johnny couldn't appear in the cartoon, so it was Reed, Sue, and Ben and Herbie, and I've hated Herbie ever since. Sorry for all y'all that love Herbie. Sorry, I'm showing my bias. I'm just being honest. Okay. So when we get in here, so we see Ben and Herbie's voice sounds really weird, and he's got like his eyes look like old school reel-to-reel tape. And once again, that's so old. Okay, but this should be an automated house. And look, they got a wall phone. That landline wall phone roots it in the past. It's not that people don't have those now, but those are rare these days. Okay, so that kind of roots it in the past. So once again, everything's kind of clashing, at least to me. Okay, I know people have different takes on it, so I want you to leave me your comments below. But it feels like that to me. Then we get to Ben himself. Now, Ben is a mixed bag for me. The CGI looks good, and they capture the nuances of Evan's face and his eyes and all that. And that's really good, but it also looks like Pixar. It looks like Pixar style. So again, it looks like a blend of animation and live action, but maybe not in the way they intended, because it takes you out of it a little bit. And some of it is the lighting, like I said. Also, it's a huge mistake not to give Ben a gravelly voice, because his vocal cords are now surrounded by orange rock. So he shouldn't sound like Ben sounded before he got his powers. Now, Chiklis nailed this with that Ben voice, and he said that wasn't done in post-production. He really changed his voice to give us that rough kind of rough sound. And so it's a little jarring to hear Ben talk, but his voice doesn't sound transformed, because that makes sense, because his entire body has been transformed into the orange rock substance. So his voice shouldn't be the same, because his vocal cords wouldn't be flapping the same in the same kind of larynx and throat. You see what I'm saying? Okay, so Ben looks good, but you can also tell he's not really there. It's the motion capture, as opposed to Chiklis in a suit that's actually in the frame. Okay? So next up, we have a flashback to how they first get their powers and the first flight. Now, this isn't an origin movie, And once again, you can look at all that equipment. That equipment is old. So how do you have something that looks like the Baxter Building in the same universe with technology that looks like a straight out of a 70s sci-fi flick? But okay, or even a 60s sci-fi flick. But okay. So why is this important? Why is this significant? I'll tell you why. It didn't happen like this. There was no televised sanctioned spaceflight in the comics. You know what happened in the comics? Reed broke into NASA and stole a rocket. The original idea was to beat the Russians into space. And Reed's flight wasn't sanctioned by the government at all. So he broke in, stole a rocket, and just did it anyway. That speaks so much to his character, and it speaks so much to the fact that he was willing to endanger his family for his own ideas, because that's kind of the theme of Reed's relationship to the Fantastic Four. And it adds to the tragedy of their existence if the whole operation was illegal in the first place. If the whole thing was illegal and they shouldn't have been doing it nowhere, then what happened to them is more tragic. But if it's this kind of televised event and all the kids are rushing to see it and there's all kind of pictures and everybody's all thumbs up and that kind of thing, that's a completely different vibe. This is what I mean when I say why it's so important for people to know the comics, because this casts the event that they got their powers in a completely different light. The same way they keep getting, in every new iteration of Spider-Man, they keep getting rid of Uncle Ben. You can't get rid of Uncle Ben and have it be the same Spider-Man, because Spider-Man's whole motivation to become a crime fighter was the death of his uncle. So when you minimize or eliminate that, it ain't Spider-Man no more. That's what this kind of feels like to me. They weren't celebrities. They weren't on the news. They weren't known. They weren't anything. They were breaking the law to get in that rocket. They stole a rocket. Okay, that's not what that is. But anyway, so I'm just saying that it adds to the gravitas of what you're doing when you actually honor how things really happen. And I'm going to talk in a minute about the normie audience versus the geek audience or non-normie audience, however you want to say it. Okay. All right, so we've seen Ben, and so we get to kind of see them use their powers. And so next up, we see Johnny. And once again, Johnny with that fake blonde hair, he just looked goofy. I'm sorry. He looked like 35-year-old, 17-year-old. I'm sorry. They tried to make Jessica Alba look like Sue, but she's Hispanic. So they gave her these big, bright blue contacts and that really bad blonde wig. And every time she came on, especially with the second movie, Rise of the Silver Surfer, her eyes were bugged out. I mean, we made fun of her because Jessica Alba is beautiful, but her eyes were bugged out with those contacts. And we're like, why couldn't you just find a Caucasian blonde actress? So I'm saying, when you have to work, if you don't know how to make the actor disappear into the makeup and the contacts and all that, then it's going to jump out. It's really going to jump out. And so Johnny, Joseph Quinn, is just jumping out to me like they're trying too hard. He looks like Anthony Michael Hall from The Breakfast Club or 16 Candles. I'm just keeping it a buck, okay? That's just my opinion. Okay, so at least when he flames on, he looks like the torch should look. But how hard is it to get that right? Because we've been doing on fire effects for years now. So I'm like, you better get that right. I mean, people can get that right, on an iPad. But anyway, because we've had that for a long time. He does not, however, say flame on when we see him take off. So I hope that's somewhere in the movie because that's his signature line. That's his, battle cry before he fires up. So I hope we do hear it at some point. Now, next up, we hear and see Sue. And we hear and see her using her powers. Now, the overdub, or what's playing underneath this, it's scenes of them using their powers. Ben is actually running and Sue is using her powers. But it sounds like it's a pep talk to Reed, and the way it ends is it's a pep talk to him because it looks like they're getting ready to face something. So it reminded me of the CW Flash because every time before Barry had to spring into action, about 3/4 of the way in the episode, Barry needed a pep talk. Sue sounds like she's doing that. Ben was always a rock. Johnny was always a hothead. I'm right here, even though I'm invisible. I'm here with you, and we'll face it as a family. That's what she's saying as we cut to these different scenes. So, we see her using her force fields in that picture, and she looks decent. In the other picture, when they were flashing back to where they got the powers, she turned completely invisible in Reed's hand, so that looked like a pretty good shot. Because there's a difference between transparent and invisible. The way they did it with the Alba movies is that she turned transparent first and then she turned completely invisible, and I really like that effect. They did that on the old cartoon too, transparent and then invisible, because those are two different things. I like it, but little subtle touches like that I really, really like. But it doesn't look bad. She looks good here. She's using her force fields. Now, just for the record, she did not have her force fields at first. Her force fields came later because they realized her invisibility is basically a defensive power and a stealth power. So they wanted her to be able to do more, so they dialed in the fact that she made force fields, but she did not have them at first. At first, all she could do was turn invisible, and then she could turn other things invisible. Force fields came later. They came soon after, but they didn't come initially. Okay? What we don't get to see that really jumps out is we don't get to see Reed stretch, which was a head scratcher for me. Like, why would you show the rest of them and not show Reed stretching? So is that going to be like a big reveal, or is that like the best effect in the movie and they're saving it? Or why would you not show that since we get to see everybody else in action? I don't know. I couldn't figure that. Okay. They're apparently preparing for the arrival of Galactus, because everything that's happening in that montage while Sue is talking is they seem to see him coming through the clouds. And then we see his shadow over the city. And then also during that montage, we see the really groovy, Fantastic Four-mobile. And once again, it looks cool, but it looks funny, given the fact that I'm thinking about, Atlanta or New York or anywhere in the 60s, and we're driving that thing. I don't know. It's like an old car trying to be a new car, trying to be an old car. I just can't get away from this clash of aesthetics that they keep trying to throw at us. Okay. Then there's a quick cameo of John Malkovich, and like I said, he's either going to be Puppet Master or Red Ghost. He's either going to be Alicia's father if they introduce Alicia in this movie, and I think they are, or he's going to be Red Ghost. He's going to kill as Red Ghost because he looks like Red Ghost. Okay. If he does that, that's going to be off the chain, and those apes are going to have to be CGI because they have powers too. But if we see that, okay. So the only red flag for that, because I love Malkovich, I just like him and just about everything I've seen him in. The only red flag for that is that, just like with Superman, there's too many characters in this movie. The biggest thing that jumped out at everybody when they announced the casting for James Gunn's Superman is we got Superman, we got Supergirl, we obviously have Lois and Jimmy and Perry, but we got Hawkgirl, we got Guy Gardner, we got Metamorpho. We got a whole bunch and everybody's like, we got Mr. Terrific. So it's like, how are we going to have all these characters in a movie? So this is starting to feel like that to me. It's starting to feel like they're taking, the first several years of Fantastic Four stories and trying to compress them all together in this one movie. And that's too much in one movie. That's too much in one movie. Now, if they're cameos, that's one thing. But if you don't explain who they are to the normies, it's not going to have any impact. Us common people, we know who Alicia Masters is, and we know her father's the Puppet Master. We know who Red Ghost is, but if it's not explained to the audience, these cameos will have no meaning if they're just cameos. And if they have real decent screen time, that's a lot of people, a lot of characters in one movie. Okay? And may I just say, we get the big kahuna, we get Galactus himself. Shouldn't be doing that in the first movie. The first movie should be Mole Man, just like in the comics. Or we would even take Red Ghost. Okay? Because the Fantastic Four has one of the best rose galleries. Their rose gallery, especially in the time they were created, their rose galleries is, Spider-Man and Batman get all the credit, but their rogues gallery is severely underrated and underplayed because they have some of the best villains of all time, especially when you consider the time they were created in. I mean, it was just such an incredible thing that Lee and Kirby were popping off. Well, Galactus should come later. We know the team is already established, but the problem with Galactus in the first movie is where do you go from there? My favorite Fantastic Four villain is Annihilus. With the cosmic throat rod and his bat wings, Annihilus is crazy. Okay. And he always wants to invade and come out here, out of the negative zone into Reed's world. I love Annihilus. I've always loved Annihilus. So I would even take that. But it really should be Mole Man. Okay, because when you ratchet up the stakes to a completely global threat, somebody's coming is going to eat your planet. I realize it takes a Fantastic Four to save it, but where do you go from there? How do you follow that? That's the same problem they had with Thanos in the Thanos saga with the Avengers. Where do you go after that? Where do you go after that? And then trying to do Secret Wars and Beyond and all this stuff now, with all the stuff that's happened in between time, seems like it's going to have less impact. Okay? But we don't get a front-facing shot of Galactus. His helmet from behind looks kind of steampunk. At least it did to me, It looked kind of, let me pull that up. There's the cool Fantastic Four mobile that I just talked about. And I'm like, what century are we in? Okay. And there's Malkovich. Okay. Looking just like the Red Ghost. So now let me pull up the Galactus shot. Okay, so his helmet, that looks kind of steampunk to me. I don't know if that's what they were going for. So he's way bigger than the Statue of Liberty, which is cool, which is right. So that's comic accurate proportions and all that. That's really cool. But I'm like, it looked a little janky. It looked a little rusty, like maybe you need to polish, get some, rust away and just, kind of get that helmet. But maybe I'm being nitpicky. I don't know. But anyway. There's also no signs of Shallow Surfer. Now, for those of you that don't know, all my comic people we know, they done picked a what if AU one-shot version of Silver Surfer. Silver Surfer is Norrin Rad. Galactus came to his home planet. He volunteered to be Galactus's herald to help him find other planets to eat in return for sparing his planet, and he had to leave his girlfriend, Charlotte Bow, behind to become the Surfer. That's Norrin Rad's story. He's a tragic but powerful character. We ain't seeing him. Somehow we're getting the one version that was only 4 or 5 pages long of his girlfriend becoming encased in silver, and she becomes a Silver Surfer. She's not in the trailer, but I'm like, once again, are you going to carry that whole thing for? Are you going to give her all of Norrin Rad's storylines? Because that's just going to throw comic fans off completely. Normies might buy it because they might not know any different. Maybe, I don't know. But we're going to be like, what is this? Once again, unnecessary gender swapping, or even though there was a female Silver Surfer, they picked the most obscure appearances of these characters and then put them in a major motion picture and then say there's something wrong with us for expecting the traditional characters. Okay. And then we get the final shot of the four, which is also my background, as the music blares. Now, let me tell you, once again, if you read the comics, you know which costumes they are. Those are the reverse color costumes that they got a while back. That's not their traditional dark blue and black. So all the white you see on their costumes traditionally is black. And all the blue that you see in their costumes is dark blue. It's even darker than navy blue. It's almost midnight blue. That's their traditional look. Those costumes came later in the comics where the colors were reversed. So now there's a lighter blue, and that blue is even lighter than the comic blue, and then the white trim traditionally is black. So with that look, it gives it an even more cartoony feel for some reason. I would have preferred the midnight blue and the black because that tends to give it more gravitas on the screen. This looks a little bit cartoony, but also it's the lighting. It's the lighting on everything. It gives it a little bit of a surreal dream sequence kind of feel, which cognitively pulls you out of it just a little bit, just a little bit. Okay. And so, I want to hasten to say that there's a difference between saying something is bad versus it's not what I would have done. If I would have written, directed, produced this movie needs to be epic and it needs to be serious and it needs to tie into the larger MCU in some way. Now, they will probably have a post-credit scene that does, but if these are not the four that save 616 from Galactus, then again, this movie is self-contained. And if it's self-contained, it's going to be a one and done. It's going to be a one-off, which means why are we going to care about the Fantastic Four in the main universe? They're going to have to reintroduce them all over again if they're not the ones that say, because this is one of the events saving the world from Galactus that put the Fantastic Four on the map in the fictional world on a global scale, because they're the ones that fought off the planet Eater. So their profile was raised exponentially once the world understood that these are the heroes that fought off Galactus that saved Earth's life. And also the Surfer obviously took notice of them too when they developed a relationship with him. So this is a major, major event in the comics. So I'm saying if this don't have nothing to do with the universe that Captain Falcon is in, then why would we care? Do you see what I'm saying? So we haven't seen the movie yet. This is just a trailer. So I'm hoping they address these issues in the trailer because it needs to be tied into what they're going to bring the FF into if movie is going to have any relevance. I don't even understand why they would start the FF in an alternate universe on an alternate Earth. Why? Why? I don't get it. We'll also see, if you know anything from the comics, once again, you know what the Future Foundation is and how it came about. So there's their logo, and that looks retro. That looks like, something you would have seen in the I Love Lucy days in them. The Future Foundation, you know what that is from the comics. It remains to be seen what they mean by the Future Foundation in this movie. So I'm interested to see how that resolves and what that means, what that's going to tie into, because it depends on whether or not they introduce their kids, and it depends on how they introduce their kids, because there's a story behind Franklin, there's a story behind Valeria. There's huge stories behind them. So Reed and Sue just didn't have kids. There's this huge thing, and it makes a difference as the characters evolve. And also, now all my comic people, what I'm about to say, you know this. You absolutely know what I'm going to say. But Spider-Man is more connected to the Fantastic Four than the Avengers. In the MCU as it stands, Tom Holland's Spider-Man is really Iron Spider. He's really connected to Tony Stark. They cut out everything with Uncle Ben, and they basically made Tony Stark Spider-Man's surrogate father, which was a mistake. So he's basically Iron Spider. In the comics, Spider-Man sought out the Fantastic Four, sought out Reed Richards, and they basically formed a bond. And so the Fantastic Four pretty much adopted Spidey. So he was like an unofficial fifth member for a long time. Then they did a what if when he actually became a member, and they became the Fantastic Five. And then later on, when he replaces them, he's part of the replacement Fantastic Four with Spidey, Hulk, Wolverine, and Ghost Rider. And then Spidey's also a part of the Future Foundation with the white costumes. So and then he's Johnny Storm, one of Johnny Storm's best friends, if not Johnny's best superhero friend. Okay? Peter Parker and Johnny Storm are best BFFs, best superhero friends in the comics. So if they don't introduce Spider-Man in this, we lose all of that. Everything I just said will only be known to comic people. The same way we lose Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne or Janet Pym, the way they did the Avengers, they completely cut the Pyms out. And they made Tony Stark the center of everything. Okay, so you lose so much when you lose the Pims as founding members of the Avengers. Well, you're going to lose the same amount of material if you don't tie Spider-Man into the Fantastic Four early in his career and early in their careers, because that's the way it happened in the comics. And they were close from that point on. Spidey would send up a signal, or Johnny would send up a signal, and they know to meet at the top of the Statue of Liberty. And they had many, many adventures together. And sometimes they got angry, sometimes they fell out. Johnny and Peter fought a lot when they first met, and then they became best buds. So there's a whole line of stories there that you have to have Spider-Man in to do. So that's what I mean when I say, is this tying in to the 616 universe, or not 616, but I'm saying whatever universe the MCU is, because Iman Vellani told Kevin Feige it's not 616, which she was right. It's not. I'm just saying that. I mean that in lieu of the main Marvel universe in the movies. That's what I mean. The main universe that WandaVision and Thanos and all that stuff happened in. Is this going to be tied into that? Because if this is just an offshoot, again, there's going to be so many stories we lose. And I don't want to lose them as a longtime comic fan. So let me wrap this up. All in all, I still feel like I'm processing too many different things at once as I watch this. Is this old? Is it futuristic? Is it an alternate universe? Does it tie into the main MCU? Will it have anything to do with Tony Stark Doom or no? Are they going to be involved with Secret Wars? The Beyonder? Are they going to be involved with that? Is it going to be like, the main question also, is this live action or Pixar or both? Because like Who Framed Roger Rabbit was like Toons and live action on purpose, and you can see the difference between the two. But this looks like Pixar and live action. And again, that lighting makes it hazy. It seems like they want this movie to be all them things at once. And I don't know if it's going to be able to pull that off from the trailer, because it just feels like too much at once to me now. Too many different things. But part of that is because I'm a comic fan. I can't get past my bias. I can't look at it like a normie would. Okay? So then, the question becomes, if it's not going to be a part of all that, how are they going to introduce the Fantastic Four, and are they going to get their actual propers and respect? Because if they just show up from another dimension, then nobody in the MCU will know them, or if maybe they died in the main MCU and nobody ever talks about them, I don't know how they're going to do it. How are they going to tie that together? Okay. So from a comic fan point of view, which is really the only way I can see it, I'm kind of scratching my head with all these questions. If they want normies, however, they want normies to buy tickets, not us. Okay. There's not enough of us to make them the $1 billion that they want. So they want this to appeal to normies. From a normie point of view, what I think this is going to be is kind of a live action Incredibles mixed with the Jetsons in terms of aesthetic. So a live action Incredibles mixed with a futuristic Jetson aesthetic. If that's what they're going for, I think normies will really like that, because I really don't think they have any reason not to. Because all of the nitpicks I talked about today, except, the first one with the interviews, that wasn't me being nitpicky. That was them being awkward in that interview. But the nitpicks I talk about is coming from comic knowledge. If the movie can pull off live action Incredibles mixed with jets and tech, I think it can be a success. That's not necessarily the movie that I wanted to see, but that doesn't make it bad or wrong. And I think normies can glom onto that. But it all has to do with the tone. So yes, it does need to have humor, but it doesn't need to be goofy. And yes, it does need to have weight, but it doesn't need to be dark body horror. That's what Fan Forstic was in 2015. Remember that? What Josh Trank did with that movie was he turned it into body horror. So it was really, that was the original idea for the Fantastic Four I've read. And then they lightened it up after the first issue, and they gave that idea to Doom Patrol. So Doom Patrol became the heroes that were body horror based, to where their powers were more of a curse and they were trapped. And Fantastic Four became a little bit more lighter fare, more super hero-y type. because at first they were going to be body horror, but then it switched. So Doom Patrol got that. So the Fan Forstic film with Michael B. Jordan from 2015 went kind of more the body horror route, and nobody liked that. Everybody universally agrees that's one of the worst superhero movies of all time. Plus, they messed Dr. Doom up terribly. That wasn't Doom at all. So that's why, again, I have all these questions, but that's as a comic fan. As a normie approaching this, if they can make it, if they can fuse that retro and that future and make it kind of Incredibles where we have a fun family dynamic, but not so fun as goofy, and we have a good superhero dynamic, but not so heavy as dark, I think they can pull it off. I think it can be good. Now, except for Eben, I can't get past the actors. I believe Evan could be Ben. The rest of them just feel off to me. Now, to be successful, and this is the thing, there's so many blueprints of success. Nobody understands nowadays why they don't go back to something more successful and just copy that. The most successful superhero outings are always those that look like the character walked right out of the pages of the comic. Christopher Reeve's Superman, Linda Carter's Wonder Woman, Chris Evans's Captain America, J.K. Simmons, sorry to say J.K. Rowling, no, not her, J.K. Simmons, J. Jonah Jameson, literally look like they walked right off the page. That always works, even for people that aren't comic readers, although Superman and Wonder Woman are very, very well known. But when you make it look like you lifted the hero right out the comic and now they're in live action, that always works. That's why everybody loved Chris Evans' Captain America so much, because his portrayal of Cap took Cap to a new level. Okay? And so I don't understand why they don't copy that every time. Good book-to-screen translations really stick for both normies and geeks alike. So I don't know why they don't do that, because I can't get past the casting choices. I'm sorry. Malkovich works for me, no matter who he plays. Eben works for me as Ben. But the other three, just can't get past them. I'm sorry, just being honest, okay? This trailer is full of a bunch of people spin on the Fantastic Four. So it feels like movies by committee. Like, let's throw a little bit of this in, let's throw a little bit of this in, because there are so many different ideas, and I told you there's a clash of aesthetics going on at once. When you do a movie like this, you need to get a seasoned director that has a singular vision. You know who does that well? Ridley Scott. You know who does that well? James Cameron. You know who does that well? Steven Spielberg. You know who does that well? Doug Liman, Firstborn Identity. You have a director with a singular vision, you let them do what they do, and the studio gets out the way, then the movie has this cohesiveness, a flow. That might still happen here. I'm not saying that can't happen. I'm saying the way the trailer feels to me is like it's a bunch of different ideas fighting for the same space. And that's not the feel we want. So if all the audience has going into this film is the Alba Evans movies as a reference and Fan Forstic, I wonder if this film is enough to change their minds about the Fantastic Four in a positive way. Marvel's first family needs to be getting the respect they deserve. Now, Vanessa Kirby said in her interview that she said the cast bonded right away, which is good, because that should come across on the screen. And she said it felt like a family right away, which is great. That should come through on the screen. But I'm hoping they still get the respect that they deserve. Because if they don't, it's going to be the Fantastic Four, yet another iteration, trying to sell themselves to another audience. And these movies have come out 10 years apart. So the first Alba Evans movie was 2005. Fan Forstic was 2015. Now it's 2025, and now we got this one. So are they trying to sell themselves to a brand new audience? Are they trying to bring in comic audiences? Are they trying to appeal to normies? Like, what are they doing? I wanted all that to be clear in the trailer, and it's not. So again, just a trailer. So I'm sure we have at least one more trailer to go. We'll probably get to. We're probably going to see the Surfer and more of Galactus in the next trailer. Maybe. I hope they don't do like they did with Captain America Brave New World and spoil the biggest reveal, which they kind of did with Galactus. But we didn't need to see Red Hulk into the movie, and we didn't need to see that it was Ross. But that cat's out of the bag now, because every trailer they put out so far with Sam is Sam getting beaten up, showing him not being a super soldier. I'm like, don't you understand that's counterintuitive what you're trying to do, trying to sell him as Captain America? So this might be a little bit counterintuitive if they're trying to get us to tie this into the larger MCU and they're trying to get the Fantastic Four the respect, because they deserve respect, because we wouldn't have Avengers or X-Men or Defenders or Champions or pick your favorite team without the Fantastic Four. Let me say that one more time. We wouldn't have your favorite Marvel team, whoever it is, Alpha Flight, Defenders, Champions, X-Men, Excalibur, whoever, the Shire, Imperial Guard, my personal favorite. We wouldn't have those teams. We wouldn't have those teams if it wasn't for the Fantastic Four. They're the ones that kicked it off. They're the ones, being heroes without masks, to contrast to DC's heroes, being heroes that were well known, that were scientists and explorers who also had powers. DC's heroes were about the hero, and the civilian identity was just a distraction so people would know who they were for real. Fantastic Four were who they were all the time. So they were groundbreaking at the time. I want to see that reverence, that weight, that gravitas translated into this movie. So I'm still not sure from this first trailer if that's what's going to happen. So fingers crossed it happens. All right, those are my thoughts. Thanks to those that watch me live. Thanks to those that are watching this on the replay. Please like, share this video, subscribe, and ring the bell so you know when I drop new content. My normal weekly chat comes out Friday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, but I had to do this one today because everybody kept saying, what about that trailer? What about the trailer? I mean, it literally set the internet abuzz. And there's a million videos out there already, and all of my followers on Twitter were like, we can't wait to hear what you have to say about the trailer. So I'm like, okay, I got to do this today. So I am going to drop another live stream on Friday at my regular time. And I'm picking between two topics I want to talk about. But please, again, like this video, share this video, subscribe to my channel, ring the bell so you don't miss any of my content. And also leave me some comments underneath this video, because I want to hear what you have to say about what I've said. And I want to hear what you think about the trailer itself. Okay? That's it. I'll see you on Twitter. I'm probably heading over there now. So have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you soon. DT2 out.